in line with everything, we want to offer a short word of prayer. So would ask Lions on the call to please recite the Lions prayer. Where Lions meet, be present, Lord, to weld our hearts with one accord, to do thy will, Lord. Make us strong to aid the weak and right the wrong. So first and foremost, let me welcome all our treasurers, incoming treasurers to this session this evening. We hope that tonight's session will allow you to better prepare yourself to take on the role of treasurers for your club. As we know, this is one of the most, well, we're not saying that some aren't important, but one of the most important roles of an individual in the club. And our presenter this evening is Lion Jewel Held from Barbados, and we're going right into the session because we're running a bit late. And please, on a note, housekeeping, if you have joined the call and it's not the name that you would have registered for, please amend so that it will reflect the individual who registered for this program, because we would not want to see iPhone 10 or Samsung tab. We want to see individuals' names. So once again, thank you very much and welcome to this evening's session. And we'll hand right over to Lion Jewel for her to begin her session. Lion Jewel, here's to you.
Thank you so much, Louisiana. Good evening to everyone. First of all, let me apologize for the absence of my camera. It is not working, and apparently I need some part which they've ordered, so I'm awaiting that. But I'm hoping that you will find this evening session informative. I'm here to spend an hour with you, and I'm just going to share my screen now as we get started. And in the next hour or so, we hope to cover off. It's my thing not moving now. The responsibilities of the treasurer, looking at your responsibilities in the first month on a monthly basis, ongoing activities, talk a little bit about bank account management and reporting, responsibilities and semi-annual and annual basis. Of course, ensuring financial integrity is critical for the role of the treasurer and what happens at year end as we wrap up our tour of duty. There's a lot of material here. When I go through the slides, you will see I'm not going to be reading everything, but if necessary, the slides can be made available to you for you to digest at your convenience if you want, if you require that to be done. But before we get started, I just want to get a pulse as to, I know we have about 28 persons on 29 persons or so online. If you can just give me through the chat, whether you're treasurer for the first time, returning as a treasurer, or just interested in learning what a treasurer does. If you can just indicate in the chat 1, 2, or 3, so that we have an idea of, where you're in terms of your knowledge and experience in the role of treasurer. Len, Louisiana, can I crave your indulgence just to give me an indication of what the responses are?
Okay, 1 second. Let me look at it. Sure. Okay. Right. Well, we have a few first timers. 1, 2, 3. There's somebody who's number 3, so that means 3 times around. Somebody
that means that they just want to learn a little bit more about the treasurer, which is fantastic. So that's fine.
Okay.
All right, so we have a couple of persons who are here for the first time and a couple of persons who are returning as treasurer, and at least one person who just wants to know what the treasurer does. I guess that person's aspiring to be a treasurer, and this is hopefully they'll find this information useful. All right, so let's get started. Thanks, Len, Louisiana.
Welcome.
So as the club treasurer, your responsibility is to keep the club's financial records. I'm going to ask you if you can just mute your lines, please. If you have a question, I invite you to raise your hand and we'll acknowledge and you can just ask your question. Otherwise, I appreciate if you can just mute your lines. So as club treasurer, your responsibility is to keep the club's financial records in order to ensure that the club operates within a proper fiduciary capacity. You are responsible for managing all of the financial operations of the club. That includes invoicing, payment of dues, recording and processing receipts, and the payments for both the admin and the public service accounts. Some of your key responsibilities: prepare the budgets as approved by the directors, receive monies and deposit those monies into the respective bank accounts, make payments to any as approved by the board of directors. Now, it is important to make sure that you have at least two separate accounts. So you need to have an admin account and an activity account at a minimum. Some clubs may have more than one activity account, but it is important to separate those accounts, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. Your responsibilities also include preparing financial reports, and to, of course, maintaining the club's records, and where required, to file taxes and to comply, of course, with any local laws. I'll break down a little bit in little granular now around the treasurer's duties, banking. So we talked about depositing monies. So deposit monies, make payments, financial reporting. Some of this I've just spoken about earlier. Record keeping. As treasurer, you are the chair of the finance committee. So you chair that committee, and of course, the president will determine the other members of that committee. Your responsibility is financial planning and budgeting, along with the board of directors to set the club dues, but your responsibility is to collect those dues, to advise on fundraising activities because you hold the purse of the club, protect the club against fraud, make sure the club understands its financial obligations, and as I said before, any kind of regulatory filing that needs to happen, you are the one as treasurer that will need to do such filings. Now, a club treasurer need not have any specific skills, but what I've outlined here are some skills that we think would be useful for you in the role of treasurer. So somebody who's organized, somebody who's detail-oriented, excellent at record keeping, numerical, has good communication skills, computer literate, good Excel skills are, I don't want to say they're nice to have. Is a wonderful skill to have in the role of a treasurer. Somebody who may have a financial accounting background, not necessary, but if they do, that's an added bonus. And of course, the ability to present numerical and financial information in an understandable manner. So these are some of the skills you may want your treasurer to have in order to make sure that they're keeping the club on track with its financial responsibilities. So the year starts July 1. What is your responsibility during the first month of the new fiscal year? During the first 30 days, your responsibility is to work with your secretary to make sure that the roster of members is up to date, that you have a good understanding of where members stand with respect to the payment of dues. If anyone has dues coming forward from this year, you need to be aware of that. You need to set up a system so you can organize and maintain. As I said, you must have at least those two accounts. So you must have the admin account. You must have at least one activity account. So you have to have a system to organize those accounts. And this is why I said things like Excel is a wonderful tool, because then that tool can help you to organize those two accounts. And in organizing those two accounts through Excel, you're able to maintain revenue and expenses. You're also responsible for having a system that you record the statements from the bank. So you get your monthly bank statements, or how often you get those statements. You need to be able to reconcile those statements. So in the first month, what you're really doing is making sure you're putting systems in place to help track these things so that as you go through the year, it becomes easier and easier. A system in place for your reporting to the board and your reporting to the membership, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. You need to create your login. As treasurer, you would have access to Lions Portal in the role of treasurer. You need to make sure that you have an active login. You need to make sure that you have the ability to check your outstanding club account balance on the Lions Portal as well. In terms of your responsibilities for your banking responsibilities at your local bank, you need to make sure that you are now an authorized signature on that account. I know sometimes, depending on the jurisdiction you operate and the bank which you're operating within, sometimes that could be a tedious process, but it is critical as treasurer that you are a signatory to that account, and then you will have, the other signatories to that account. But because you hold the club's purse, you need to know what's going, the inflows and the outflows. And of course, in the first 30 days, you are responsible for preparing the dues, which you will ensure that each member receives during the first 30 days in office. So that's the first 30 days. But as you go through the year, here are some things that you need to do on a monthly basis. So when you receive monies, you need to make sure that you deposit those monies early, and that you properly categorize the receipts. So if you are collecting money for a particular activity, you need to make sure you have a record of all those monies collected. You need to ensure that you give receipts where applicable as well for all monies collected. You need to make sure that you pay any outstanding bills on a monthly basis, balance the accounts and present to the board of directors. For both the admin and the activities account, well, we talk about printed month-end financial reports, but not necessarily printed, but you have to have it available. So via email, some form of proper record that would have the financial reports on a monthly basis so that those can be reconciled against your bank balance as well. Prepare distribution of the monthly reports for the club and board meetings. So again, on a monthly basis, you need to present to the board of directors what the financial position of the club is, with all the monies collected and all of the monies expensed during the course of the month. And these reports must remain a permanent record of the club. So they're not yours to keep. They need to go into the records of the club. I want to pause for a minute to invite any questions. If anyone has any questions before I continue. Okay. All right. So on an ongoing basis, what are some of your responsibilities? And this is, I said most of this already, but I think it's worth repeating. To manage your club finances. That means that you will get the invoices from international, you will get the invoices from the multiple district, and you will get the invoices from the district twice yearly. And you will need to pay those invoices as once you receive them. Now, the invoices are based on the club roster as at June 30th and as at December 31st. So you'll get the first invoice from international early July, and the multiple district will follow soon after, and you will get the other invoice in early January from the international and the district. And then the responsibility is yours to make sure that those payments are made accordingly. Ongoing as well is to understand the different types of membership categories. So membership dues may differ depending on the membership category that the Lion holds. So you need to know what those categories are. You need to know whether your club has any special arrangements for certain types of memberships and invoice those lions accordingly. You need to invoice the dues to each club member. So again, as I said earlier, work with your secretary to ensure you have an accurate list of all the members, an accurate list of their membership types and categories, so that those members, you can ensure that you're keeping a running tally of the dues, the accurate dues to be paid by those members. Your obligation as the treasurer on an ongoing basis is to keep your club in good standing. So that means the prompt payment of dues, and where Lions require items to be purchased from Lions Club International, the LCI shop, then you are the one who is responsible for submitting those requests and paying for the relevant supplies. So bank account management, as I said earlier, you need to have at least 2 bank accounts, one admin account and at least 1 activity account. Both accounts you should be a signatory to both accounts. In some clubs, you have persons from the same household who may be members of the same club. Where that happens, you should not have 2 signatories from the same household as signatories to the bank account. So if you have 3 signatories to your bank account, yourself and 2 others, the 2 others should not be from the same household, right? And as I said before, sometimes clubs create more than 1 activity account, and that's okay. But if that is the case, then each account, you as treasurer will need to report on each account, and you as treasurer will need to be a signatory to each of those accounts. Attending and reporting at meetings. So as treasurer, you are expected to be at all regular and special meetings of the club and of the board of directors. We know that things pop up from time to time, and that is acceptable and understandable, but really your responsibility as far as possible is to ensure that you're attending meetings. And this is important because not only are you receiving any monies paid or paying out any money, but any presentation of the club's financial position, you need to do that at the respective meetings. So you need to present the current financial status of the club, and that would include any income and expenses. As I said earlier, you will recall that needs to be done at the board meetings at least on a monthly basis. So income, expenses, month over month, that needs to be presented to the board. Any assets, anything like that. So you should have a running total presented to the board, and a copy of that report should be presented to the secretary for inclusion in the minutes and made official records of the club. On a quarterly basis, you also need to present to the club. So while you're presenting to the board monthly, it is important and incumbent to present holistically to the club on a quarterly basis. And that would include any kind of income and expenses and the balances. And those balances should balance against your bank balances at the end of that reporting period. The quarterly report of the club should also include a comparison of your financial status versus what you would have budgeted at the start of the year, so that club members have a good understanding of the financial position of the club against what was budgeted and how the club is progressing financially. Any questions or comments? All right. think everybody's understanding. Wonderful. So, because you have to report to the board of directors on a monthly basis, and of course, report to the club on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, that financial report should include an opening balance, all monies collected, so it's all income, all expenditure, and ending balance. Now, any expenditure must be approved by the board of directors. So money should not be recorded in the financial report as an expense unless it has been properly approved by the board of directors and properly reflected in the minutes. Now, we know sometimes we have to make expenses outside of a formal board meeting, so you don't have the opportunity at a board meeting to get approval in real time. Where that happens is still incumbent upon you as treasurer to make sure that you have that approval reflected in the minutes, because the minutes are the records of the club and should reflect all those actions taken and supported and approved by the board. Receipts and invoices received should also be obtained, and make sure you keep you have records to show as the expense, any expenditure that would have been incurred over the reporting period. So a very simple example of what a financial report could look like. And of course, if you do this in Excel, it is much easier. So the income and would have the opening balance at, July 1 or August 1, September 1, and you carry this forward on a monthly basis. Any income received, you get your total. Any expenditure, you get your total. And then the balance is any income less expenditure on a monthly basis. Yeah? All right. As I said at the beginning, part of your responsibility is also to prepare budgets. So the budgets are prepared really to reflect what the club intends to, the projected income and expenses. And ideally, the budget should be balanced so that you should have a budget that projects what you intend to, the income expected should not be more than, sorry, let me start again. The income expected and the expenses should be equal. It's okay if your expenses are less than your income, but ideally, a balanced budget is preferred. Of course, budgets are not written in stone, and they can be adjusted as the year progresses. So you start the year with a budget. In some clubs, the budget is driven by the members up. So the committee chairs may determine the activities they want, prepare budgets for those, and give those to the treasurer, and the treasurer determines, a budget from that. In other clubs, the budget is prepared by the treasurer in collaboration with maybe the president or by the treasurer alone and the finance committee. And then that budget is presented to the club, and the activities of the club are driven by the budget. So it depends on what your club has been doing and what practice works well for your club. But at the end of the day, the budget is your responsibility as the treasurer, to ensure you have a budget in place so that when you're reporting to the club on a quarterly basis in terms of a financial status, you can see how you are progressing against your planned budget. Does that make sense? Right? So the admin budget should include, same thing, finances, income, payments. The activities budget would be finances from activities proposed, income from projects proposed as well, and any expenses that are anticipated throughout the year. So again, a sample admin budget would just be this: income, which would be like things like members' dues, things like till twisting, things like rental from property. Expenditure would be your dues to international and so on. If your club has an expenditure item for the president or secretary or vice president or whomever to attend any conventions, this should be included in your admin budget. And of course, the balance would be the income less expenditure. And you should keep this budget top of mind as the year progresses to ensure again that you are keeping on track with the budget. I know I'm doing a lot of talking, and I just want to invite any questions at this point in time. I'm not able to see hands, so if someone has a question, you can just unmute and just raise and just share your question.
Hi, Lion Paul from Cayman Islands. I just have two questions. First one is, I hope you can hear me.
I can, yes. Go ahead, Leopold.
Yeah, this is regarding payments. So just want to check, is there any restriction over using online banking against checkbooks?
No, none at all. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but no. No.
Uh,
This is payment to your by members or payment to international?
no, like in general, like any payments, like
Oh no.
when the
Right.
payments.
Yeah, no. And there is no restriction. Thanks for that question. So, you know, clubs can determine what works best. They can have several different options available to members. People can pay, you know, people can pay online, make that facility available. Cash, checks. In a minute, I'll talk a little bit about payment to land to LCI, the best way to do that, or one of the options to do that. But certainly there are absolutely no restrictions in the ways that members' dues can be collected.
Thanks for that. And just one more thing.
Sure.
So within the club, there'll be like subcommittees for each project. Yeah, I mean that could be in any size, and the treasurer wouldn't be on all those committees. So there should be like a finance person on that project itself. Is that my understanding?
No, I don't know that that's absolutely required. I think what has to happen is that the treasurer, ultimately the treasurer, but certainly the finance committee needs to know what are the activities planned, what is, and keep, because any payments made towards that activity, the treasurer has to account for those payments. So whether those are payments received, receipts will need to be written because that's money coming in and we need to keep a record of that. Or if those are payments going out, then invoices need to be received because the treasurer will need to pay against those invoices. But certainly in the planning of the activity, that information needs to come to the treasurer because the treasurer will have to determine whether if there are expenses to be incurred to plan that activity, whether the club is in a financial position to do so. And this is why I'm saying it is so critical, it's important to ensure that as treasurer, that you share the financial position of the club at least on a quarterly basis and with the board of directors on a monthly basis, so that everybody has a good understanding of the financial position of the club. So we can't be planning an activity that is going to be expensive to the club, and the club does not have the financial position to support that activity. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks.
Wonderful. All righty. Thanks for those questions, Len Paul. Let's move on a little, just a summary here of your semi-annual. So I said it at the beginning. You get billed twice annually in July and January, and your responsibility as treasurer is to pay those dues. So as treasurer as well, So some clubs invoice members on a semi-annual basis. Some clubs invoice members on an annual basis for their individual dues. Again, you do what works best for your club, but certainly you get the invoices from international on a semi-annual basis and invoices from the district on a semi-annual basis as well. So at least semi-annually, we need to pay international and district dues from the dues collected. So it is important to ensure that however you invoice your club members, that you have a record of payments. So some persons, again, make arrangements to pay in different ways. And we could touch on that in a minute, but you need to ensure that you are keeping a record of how the dues are collected per member based on the member billing that you would have sent after you would have collaborated with the secretary and understood the different membership categories and what dues are applicable to them. So if you're paying to Lions International, as I said, part of your responsibility is to ensure that you can log into the Lion portal. And when you log into the Lion portal, you will see jurisdiction. You can choose your jurisdiction, then you can choose your club, and you can pay the dues to Lions International. You can pay with PayPal if you have PayPal, or you can pay now. And pay now means you're paying via credit card. And you're paying online. So any credit cards that are accepted by Lions International are Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. Alternatively, you can make your payments to Lions International via a US draft or a wire transfer. So there's several ways which you can make your payments to Lions International. And of course, the credit card would be less expensive than a US draft or wire transfer. If you have that facility, my recommendation would be to use that as a first option. It may mean, as treasurer, I know that this has happened in some clubs, that the treasurer themselves pays with their credit card and gets reimbursed from the club. If that is an option available to you, you can also explore that as well. All right. So we have situations in clubs where persons may have challenges paying their dues. And here are just a few options that you may want to consider as you discuss with your board of directors some options available to assist members to pay their dues. So to Land Paul's question, payments can be made online. When paying dues online, it is important for the sender to include their name attached to that online payment, because when the payment is made online and there's no narrative to support that, it is difficult sometimes to identify who the payment is intended for. So at least the name of the person making the payment coming into the account would help the treasurer. Sometimes you may also need to consider a payment plan. So allowing members to pay incrementally throughout the year. In some situations, you may have agent members that you may need to physically go and collect their dues from them. But we want members to be paying their dues. We want to support them to do so as far as possible. So these are just some options available that you can consider and have discussions with your board of directors around some of these options as to whether they want to introduce any of these to support members in the payment of dues. Now, unfortunately, we wouldn't want this to be happening in this in the upcoming Lionistic year, but it can happen where a club gets into financial suspension. And what does that mean? It means that the club has an unpaid balance in excess of $20 per member or $1,000 per club and that outstanding, whichever is less, and that outstanding balance is past 120 days. And in those cases, the club would be automatically temporarily suspended in suspension. Now, as treasurer, we would try our best to avoid those types of situations and ensure that dues are paid on time and that members' dues are also paid. When a club is in suspension, the club cannot conduct service activities, can't do fundraising activities. Pretty much all the club can do during a period of when they're suspended is to hold meetings. And then, of course, every effort will have to be made to make sure that they pay their dues to get back into active status, right? So just keep that in mind, because you don't want, as treasurer, you don't want your club in financial status in the next Wednesday year. Critical is ensuring the financial integrity. So the reporting helps to do this. Ensuring that your access to Lions Club International is up. You have access. Ensuring that you are a signatory, and I said earlier, to the accounts at the bank. All of those things help to ensure that you ensure the financial integrity of the club. And use of the funds raised from the public. And I think all of us as Lions, we probably know this already, but it's worth repeating, that funds raised from the club public must be used for the benefit of the public and not for the benefit of the club's administration, right? So admin funds, things like dues, fines, tail twisting, those types of things, that is what those funds are the funds that are used to run the club. And any funds raised from the public must be used for the benefit of the public. Okay. If for any reason the club's financial standing comes into question or fraud is suspected, each club is expected to have a process in place to address such finding. If the club does not have such a process in place, there is a process by Lions Clubs International, and that a complaint would have to be made, and it must be filed under the dispute resolution procedure. So again, all of this is ensuring that the financial integrity of the club and underscoring your role, your critical role as treasurer to ensure in this process. Any questions before I move on? No? All right.
No.
So as we, okay, wonderful. Thank you. As we move on then, as we pretty much come down to the end of year. So we've talked about what is expected of you in your first 30 days. We've looked at what is expected of you on a monthly and an ongoing basis. And now we're going to turn our minds to what is expected of us on an annual basis and at year end. So as treasurer, you would have started the year with preparing that budget and presented the club for approval. As you go through the year, part of the year-end wrap-up task would be ensure that you prepare any tax filings, and that you prepare and get the incoming treasurer ready for the next year. So there must be some continuity between your role as treasurer as you look to exit the seat and the incoming person's role as treasurer in terms of handing over of records, making sure that all of the records that you would have reported, all of the bank statements, all of the financial reports, the budgets, all of those things are properly kept and permanent records of the club so that you can then turn those things over to the incoming treasurer. So things like checkbooks, where you have those things like bank statements. As I said, your financial reports that you would have presented on a monthly or quarterly basis that are records of the club. Those things should be easily accessible by the next treasurer who will follow you, right? And giving guidance if necessary in terms of the new signatory, because the new treasurer will then have to become a signatory to the account. It's also part of your responsibility to ensure that the records are kept in such a way that it can be presented to the auditor, who will have to audit the club's books at the end of the year. So the bank statement, end of year bank statement, all of the minutes, which is why I kept saying, make sure that you have all of the approvals included in the minutes, because ideally the auditor should be looking for any where are those approvals for the expenses that you've identified, and the approvals should be contained in the minutes. Any receipts, fundraising events, reports, the income and expenditure for those fundraising activities, the receipts to support that, the invoices to support that. All of those things should be kept tidy, which is one of the skills. If you recall at the top of the discussion, I said one of the skills that you would want a treasurer to have is somebody who's organized. And this is helpful when the treasurer has to hand over these documents then to the auditor, so that the books can be audited at the end of the year. And I actually think we have wrapped up our session. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I want to just maybe raise a question with you if you don't have any question.
Good night, Lion Jewel. Good night, Lions.
Good night, Lan Cody. How can I help?
I had a question. I saw that you presented some templates for reporting and keeping track. I was wondering if there are templates that we are required to use, or can we find templates that suit us?
No, absolutely. Find templates that suit you. Yeah,
Okay.
find a template that suits you. It's important just to ensure what I've tried to capture is some of the critical elements of the template. So it must have your income, and it must have your expenditure, and it must have your balance. But the format in which you present that is something you need to be comfortable with and something that's easily understood by the members when you present.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Or just take a quick look at this case study.
Excuse me, I do have a question. I'm
Sure.
Lion Lennox here.
Go ahead, Lennox.
And the question is, are we required to have an independent audit on the books each year?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. The club's
Okay.
books should be audited on an annual basis.
Okay.
And not audited necessarily from it just needs to be audited by somebody who is reputable and understands what they're looking for. So I don't expect the clubs to go out and get an audit firm, an accounting firm to audit the books necessarily, but it has to be somebody who at least has that expertise or a skill to understand when they're looking at the income, expenditure, receipts, and all those things, that they can match back what you're presenting and that it balances.
And someone who is not the treasurer.
And somebody, and it is not a treasurer, so it has to be an independent person.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's take 2 minutes just to read this. So the club recently held a charity walk where they raised $10,000. During the board meeting, the club requested $2,000 for the purchase of a laptop for the club, a donation of $500 to a local school, and sponsorship of 3 students to a youth leadership program costing $3,000. So this is where I'm going to ask you for your voices in the room. Which accounts do you debit for those 3 line items? And what internal controls should the treasurer ensure, should you as treasurer ensure before making payments?
Public funds, and it must be approved by the board of directors.
Public fund for which one? All 3?
Which account for the purchase of the 500 for the school, the local, and for the sponsorship. Public funds. 2 and 3. It must be approved by the board of directors.
Okay. And what, okay, so you're saying public fund for 2 and 3, and what happens to 1?
It's a laptop for the club. I would say the
Should we
admin
take it
account.
from the admin account?
I would take the laptop from the admin account just for the personal use for the club itself. And
Okay.
this should also be approved by the board.
Okay. All right. So that's Len Andrea. Thank you for that. I think I saw a hand up. And Sam, I think, did I see?
Yes, that is correct. But I believe Line Andrea would have answered the question. So the amount for the laptop would come from the admin account, and the other 2 would be from the service account. But as you said before, it has to go through the board of directors before anything can be expended.
Okay, so take the second part of the question then. I see Lan Cody's hand is up as well. So I don't know if you want to take the second part of the question before I go to Lan Cody, or if I just invite Lan Cody.
You can invite Line.
Thank you. Lan Cody?
Yes, I just had one thing to add to what was said. The purchase of the laptop, it cannot be, but I know that 10,000 is supposed to go to the public account, not the administrative.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the 2,000 for the laptop is definitely not supposed to come from that 10,000.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so, and I may have skipped it earlier, but it's somewhere in this presentation that even where you have a part of the proceeds of an activity can be, let me see if I can find it easily for you, can be directed to the club's admin account. It depends, of course, on what that activity is. So if I say in this case that the club members took part in the charity walk, then presumably we can redirect some of those funds to the admin account, right?
Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, I'm just sorry, just give me one. I'm just looking for the piece part of it here. All right, so public activity funds includes all funds raised from the public and money accumulated from whatever. The only deductions that can be made are the direct expenses, which we know. Admin funds includes funds supported through contribution from members, fines, or individual contributions. There is some, let me just read it. Let me just find it. But there is provision for funds, some funds to be from activities, depending on the activity, of course, to be redirected to the admin account. So in this case, if the club charity, let's say the club charity walk was supported by club members, some of those activities can be, some of those funds can be redirected to the admin account. Does that make sense? So the full $10,000 could not be, but, and I can't find it right now, of course.
Hello?
Here it is. A percentage of the net proceeds from funds raised through the use of property.
Excuse me, Lion.
No.
Excuse me.
Oh.
But why too much? I try to read, but you move too fast. I have no time to read, please.
Yeah, I'm not, I was sorry. So my apologies for that.
You
Just
talk something and the reading is different. Please. Thank you.
all right. My apologies for that, Len. Pablo, I was really looking to see where in the presentation, which is why I was going quickly, so my apologies, to see where there's provision for proceeds of a fundraiser that can be used for admin funds.
Hello?
Len, Steve?
Hello? Hi, good evening. Yeah, the international board policy on fundraising, the figure is 5%, which is
It's
a very
5%.
gray
Right. I was
area because
trying
it's
to,
into 5% of growth.
yeah, I was trying to find it. Thank you so much for that. It's 5%. So let me just go back.
Yeah, but you didn't say whether it's 5% of the growth or the net, or has it been a debate every year?
Yes. So thank you for that. I was trying to find that. So a fundraiser, in which Lions participate in that fundraiser, they could be of up to 5% of the funds raised can go towards the admin account, and in this case, the laptop can be purchased for the club through that account. I am sorry if I'm confusing anyone, but I hope that is now clear. The other part of this question here is, what internal controls should the treasurer ensure before making payments? So we've established which accounts need to be debited, the admin account for the first one and the public fund account for the second items, the donation to the school and the sponsorship of the 3 students. But what internal controls do you need to make sure are in place?
Invoices and receipts on file.
Invoices and receipts, yes.
For audit purpose and for control.
And the approval in the minutes.
That's what I was looking for, to make sure that we have that approval. So we shouldn't be spending any of this money until we have that approval, and that approval is properly recorded in the minutes, and that we have the supporting invoices and receipts before making any payments. And then, of course, we need to present to the board and on a month the financial report, which would include this activity in our activities report, the income derived from this charity walk and the associated expenses in your activities financial report, which you will present to the board of directors. So as we wrap up, let me just leave with you a few tips for a successful year. Transparency of finances is important. Members have a right to know about the financial condition of the club. Concise and factual reporting in a timely manner enhances the credibility of the treasurer. So when club members purchase items for meetings or fundraisers, they must present receipts to be reimbursed. And I'm going to be bold and say I do not know that this is a practice that all clubs engage in, but it is certainly a practice that I would encourage you to make sure that you have proper records before reimbursing any member of the club or paying any expenses on behalf of the club. If a club member gives you as treasurer cash from a fundraiser, make sure, please, that you give that member a receipt, and then keep a copy, of course, in the receipt book as a record of the club. Pay all bills promptly, ensuring supporting evidence is retained, and as far as possible, utilize the technology to support you and assist you in your journey as treasurer throughout the year. I'll just open the floor for any last questions as we wrap up.
Perhaps as a comment.
Yes, then, Steve.
Yeah, I think international in recent years have now been looking at the whole rule of the one account per fund, and I know saying that you can manage all your accounts on your books, but you can also have all the funds in one account because the high charges to maintain club accounts are very expensive at banks. So you can say in your admin you should have $4,000, your activity has $6,000, but in one bank account you can account for $10,000. And that's where they're now heading. Instead of having two bank accounts, two bank charge, everything is a lot. So they're looking at that part of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know it could be an administrative burden and a financial cost to the club. I understand what you're saying. It is actually much more prudent, though, to have at least two separate accounts. But where that is not possible, then the treasurer just definitely needs to ensure that they're keeping proper records of what is going into admin and coming out from the admin and what is separate from an activity account, and make sure that those two accounts are discrete accounts, notwithstanding that it is one account at a financial institution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it will make the treasurer will have to make sure that they're properly balancing the records of the club and applying the appropriate. That becomes a little bit tricky, or could become a little bit tricky if you want to get very granular in terms of determining what are bank charges and where they apply and all those little things, but those things can be managed accordingly. Any final questions or comments? All right.
No.
Stop sharing my screen then. All right. Well, then in that case, I will just say thank you all so much for your attendance and your participation. I hope that you found the session helpful in some way. And as I said, I can share the deck, these slides with the team if they want, but the recording.
Yes, please.
No worries. The recording will be available in any event. And of course, if anyone feels the need to reach out to me, you can do so as well. I'm always available to support where possible. And on that note, I don't know if I need to turn back over to Line Louisiana.
Okay. And on that note, let me say thank you very much, Lion Jewel, for your presentation this evening. Based on the comments in the chat, it was well received, and certain Lion said they learned a lot. So we're hoping that they will be able to fully incorporate what they learned this evening as they begin their year as treasurers. On a housekeeping matter, there was a motto something and a resin in the chat. If you could amend your name before you log out, so that we would have a record of who was actually in attendance. We would appreciate that. And again, thank you very much, Lion Jewel. Thank you, Lion Treasurers, and also those Lions who are not incoming treasurers but felt the need to become familiar with the duties of the position of treasurers, with the hope that in the next year or two they would want to undertake that role within their club. So again, Lions, thank you very much for your attendance this evening. Lion Jewel, thank you very much. The recording will be made available, and when Lion Jewel sends her presentation, we will also share that with you in the event that it might be a bit cumbersome to go over the recording. So again, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for your participation in tonight's session. We look forward to seeing you at future
Thank you very much.
sessions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
And